Hi, welcome to virtual trainings on RHCE ODOV, one day, one video. And I really thank you for subscribing to our new method of virtual trainings, one day, one video. So as this is our first class in RHCE, I'm going to show you how to do an installation of RHEL7 server, as that is the first thing that you should be doing before you can jump onto the commands and all the things. So I will be using this VMware workstation here to create a VM of RHEL7. So let's get started. So we'll be doing the installation of RHEL 7.2. So if you are comfortable with the VMware workstation or VirtualBox, the things will be more or less same. Only some cosmetic looks will be different. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new VM here. So I can simply create a new virtual machine. Okay, let it go to the typical, choose, and I will choose here, or I recommend you to choose, I will install the operating system later on, because that gives me the chance of configuring the hardware and the CPU and RAM and everything. So I just click on next here. Obviously I'm going to install a Linux box, so you can choose your operating systems from here. I'll be choosing RHEL 7 64-bit. Obviously give it a name, so I give it RHCE VT1. So this machine will be my one machine. Down the line, when it's required, I'll be creating one more machine, so we will have two machines. One will be acting as the server and another one will be acting as the client. So let's give it a good name, give the size. Okay, as far as the size of the hard disk is concerned, Red Hat recommends, or the minimum requirement, not recommend, is 10 GB is enough for a very simple installation or a bare minimal installation of RHEL 7. But it's highly recommended if you can afford more than 10 GB. So I can go to 20 GB or 30 GB. Recommended is 20 GB, so let me make it 30 GB. So my hard disk will be 30 GB in size. Let's configure the hardware before we proceed. So RAM is 2 GB. So my machine has got 32 GB of RAM here. This is my server which I am using to give you the training on this virtual ODOV method. So I say, okay, give me say 4 GB of RAM or 5 GB of RAM. Say 5 GB or 4 GB, say 4096. It's not necessary that you should be giving 4096 or in multiples of 1024. I can give it say 6000 or 8000 also. So it will automatically calculate it to the nearest value. So I give 8 GB of RAM for this machine, fair enough. So see here 7.8 GB will be there. Processor, okay, let me choose 2 cores here so that it will be more faster. Though we won't be creating any VMs right now inside it, but let's enable the virtualization option here, VT. And NAT, I don't need a NAT because I will be having a host only communication. So I will be using host only, and I will also recommend you to choose host only, as you only want the two machines, the one that I am currently installing and the second one which we will be installing later on in the classes. They should be able to talk to each other. So just select host only. And one more thing that we need is the ISO. So I can choose ISO here, and I will be choosing RHEL 7.2. So it's there in my hard disk. I can close it and finish this. So once it's finished, I just need to power on this machine. This is what you need to do before you start the machine. So we will be understanding how to install RHEL 7 using its installation program Anaconda. So I just click power on, click here. Yeah, this is the option. These are the options that you will get. So I can simply press enter here, but I want to explain you a couple of things. before we jump onto the installation part straight away, you should remember that the RHEL7 installation, that what I am doing now, the installation program is Anaconda, as it is your first class in this virtual training mode. So you should remember these small things which can make a big difference. So the installation program is Anaconda, which control all the installation part. There are two methods in which I can install RHEL7. Number one, clean install. So in clean install, either you can choose a fresh machine, which I am using right now, or you can choose a clean install on a previously installed operating system like RHEL6. So when you are choosing clean install, you need to take the backup of your data. You will be formatting the disk, then you will be completing the installation, and then you have to restore the data. So normally you do clean install when you are creating a fresh machine, which I am doing right now, or you are upgrading between major versions of RHEL, like from RHEL7 you are going to from RHEL6 you are going to RHEL7. Another installation is the in-place installation. That means I am going to install RHEL 7.2 over RHEL 7.1 or RHEL 7.0. So I need not to remove anything. And if you see there, the first screen that you see here, this is my boot menu. So I have got three options coming up here: install RHEL 7.2, test this media, and install RHEL 7.2. So what the first method will do, it will be used to install the RHEL using the graphical installation program. Fair enough, I will be using this, but I want you to learn these two also. These are very important. Test this media and install RHEL 7.2. It will first check the integrity of my DVD or the ISO, whether it's correct or not. It will check the integrity, and once the integrity check is passed, then it will go for the installation. The third option is the troubleshooting. So troubleshooting option, it contains several other options that you might be using to resolve installation issues. So I'll just first go here and show it to you, couple of things. So I press enter here. So see here, so you can use the troubleshooting part to install a RHEL 7 in the basic mode. You can use it for rescue. So we use the rescue mode. We will not be using it right now. We use the rescue mode in case I'm not able to boot my machine. So I need to boot it from external media, and I need to repair something, and then I will try to power on my server. And the third option, which I think is very important and which is often neglected, you won't be learning this in they don't teach you all this nitty-gritties. So that's why one of the benefit of learning the virtual training is that I will try to explain each small pieces which are generally skipped or overlooked at. So run a memory test is very important. What it does, in case there is a fault in your memory, it can cause to system crash, right? So you must check your memory, your physical memory or your RAM, before you proceed, or when you are installing the RHEL 7 for the first time, or even if you are upgrading it from RHEL 6 to RHEL 7. I personally feel that you should always check this memory test before you proceed to the installation. I will just show it to you how it looks like and what it does. It checks your memory, complete memory, which you have allocated to this machine, or which if it is a physical box, then how much physical memory it has got. It checks it for the integrity. So if I enter here, you will see a mem test application will work, and it will check my complete memory. So you will see there, if you are able to see it, I'll just 8 GB RAM approximately will be scanned for, and here pass will go from 0 to 100. So it will take time, right? you and it gives you a lot of information. I'm using core i7, L1 cache, L2 cache, L3 cache, memory checks. So it will go from 1% to 100%, so which will take more time. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's highly recommended. If you're doing it in a production, then you should do a complete memory test. It's better to invest some time in it. So I'm just pressing escape to reboot here. You can see escape to reboot. I press escape here. Okay, and so I will be choosing install RHEL 7.2. I hope the boot menu is clear to you. So I press enter here. Here it is. Press enter to begin the installation process. Just press enter, and installation is controlled by Anaconda, which is the default installer in case of RHEL 7. So it will take slight time. Just a moment. Perfect. You see here, depending upon how much memory you have or how much resources or the compute power this machine has, it will take time. Also, obviously I need to press use English. I cannot install in German or any other language, so I just click on the continue here. One more thing that I would like to explain you here is that while installing, the installer gives you certain multiplex virtual controls. They call it tmux. Red Hat installer using tmux terminals multiplexer. So it gives me different consoles. So it ranges from Alt Control F1 to Alt Control F6. So the default, if I click here and I am pressing Alt Control F1, is the default one. See here, it's your shell. Alt Control F2 is a temporary shell with the root rights given to you. So you are free to execute certain commands, like suppose I want to see how much memory I have got, physical memory I have got in this machine. So I can simply give a free command. So it gives you your complete root privileges on this shell. So which you can use to check, say I've got 8 GB of RAM. So while installing, I can try to have swap as per my RAM. So Alt Control F2 was the key. Different options are there, and if you want to go back to the GUI, Alt Control F6. Sorry, yeah, Alt Control F6 will bring me back. So these terminal multiplexers are running in the virtual consoles. They are from Alt Control F1 to Alt Control F6. So you can use. Normally, you might be requiring to go to Alt Control F2 to give you a non-restricted shell to give certain commands here. I'm going back by pressing Alt Control F6. Perfect. So here I choose English, continue. Here it is. This is very important now. You need to choose your date and time. So I can choose my date and time based on my time zone. So I use Asia Kolkata, which is my time zone for India. Done. Keyboard layout, need not to do anything here. As it is our first class, so I will be intentionally skipping certain things which are not required right now. Installation media will be local source. That's great. So Red Hat, you can install it like your hard disk, like the supports. It supports SATA, SCSI, and SAS. Red Hat doesn't support installation on USBs and SD cards, so you should remember that. And it uses the partitions to manage it, all your stuff. So local media is there. Software installation. Let's go here, click here. So by default, it will give you a server with no GUI. The installer is running in the GUI, but once the installation is done, you won't be seeing a GUI, you will be seeing the terminals only. So let's choose here server with GUI. So it gives me the flexibility or an option of that I can I can use the GUI as well as I can use the terminal. You feel free to install all these applications from here. Just you need to select and that will be installed. Say if I intend to select FTP at the time of installation, I just need to select here. Mail server, I need to select here. There are certain core networking services. Now this is important. There are certain core networking services which are installed by default in RHEL installation. That includes your centralized log server, syslog. That includes email, SMTP, network file sharing using NFS, remote access using SSH, and resource advertisement using multicast DNS. So these 5 services, network services, will by default installed on all RHEL installations. So I will just choose server with GUI and click done here. So it automatically checks whether these packages are available with my installation source or not. Fair enough. They are available. Now system. What is your source where you are installing your RHEL7? So supported installation targets. So if I click here is my 30 GB hard disk. As I am creating a VM, so you will see a VMware, a virtual disk here. No problem. So 30 GB hard disk is there which I can use. So if I select here and if I scroll down, there are certain options available here. Automatic partitioning, I will configure the partition. So it depends what you want to do. I say I will configure the partition because that is what we will be learning. So choose here, I will configure the partition so that we will learn a lot about the different partitions on RHEL7. So you should choose I will configure partitioning here and click on done. So when you click on done, you will see a new screen coming up here, manual partitions, and these is my available hard disk 30 GB, total space available is 30 GB. So Red Hat requires minimum one partition slash, or we call it slash root, slash sorry, or root, not slash root. Slash root means root home directory. Slash or root means the top level folder. So RHEL7 requires minimum one partition, but Red Hat recommends that you should have at least 4 partitions: slash, slash home, slash boot, and swap. Okay, so how can I create partition? If you use the mount points, I click here. So I will be creating standard partition, and I'm not going to explain about LVMs and all the things right now as we are doing it for the first time. So choose standard partition, click plus, add a new mount point. So I click here, you can choose the partition slash boot, home, where, swap. So first partition that you should choose is the boot. Boot contains your kernel, OS kernel, which allows your system to boot the RHEL operating system, or if there are other operating system, multiple operating system. So Red Hat recommends that 500 MB of space is more than enough for boot. 500 MB is more than enough for the boot, because but if you plan to update to new kernels down the line, say after whenever a new kernel is available, you want to install the new kernel. So you should remember that every new kernel will take approximately 20 MB. So if you plan to have multiple kernels installed, so you need to change the size accordingly. So I am currently using it 500 MB, which will be good for me. So boot will be containing the OS kernel, which will allow my machine to boot. Add mount point. See here. So first partition will comes as SDA1. Remember this. In Linux, you can, by seeing the hard disk naming convention SD. SD means it's a SATA hard disk. If you're seeing SD, that means it's a SATA hard disk. If you see here HD, that means it's a IDE hard disk. So SD means SATA, A means ID 0 or the first hard disk, and 1 means the first partition in the first hard disk, SDA1. So this is created. Next, you should be creating slash or root. What should be the capacity? So minimum 10 GB is fine, but again Red Hat recommends that you should have more than 10 GB, say 20 GB for the root. So I can put 20 GB here, or say 15 GB. Okay, let me put 20 GB. So I still have got approximately 9.5 GB available to me. I give 20 GB here. SDA2, SATA hard disk, second partition, SDA2. And if you see here, whether you want to encrypt it, what will be the file system? So you can choose that which file system should be used to format it. So by default, under RHEL7, the default file system is XFS. So the major features of the XFS file system is that it is highly scalable. It's of very high performance. Your file system can size up to 16 exabytes. You can have unlimited directories, and the maximum partition size of a XFS file system is 500 terabytes TBs. So you can feel free to choose from XFS or ext4. So I will be choosing the default one. Encrypt, it's a good option. I will be sharing you which partitions you might want to encrypt, but not root. One more thing that you should remember is that you should never put root on LVM. I'm sorry, the boot. The boot should never be on LVM. It should always be a standard partition. Okay, let me create one more, home, as I have told you. Home. What does home contains? Home stores your user data, user home directories. So it will store the user data. So the user data will be separated from the system data, which is in slash here. So minimum 1 GB is more than enough for us, but there is no benchmark as such. The size depends upon a lot of things. Size depends on number of users, the types of files they are storing, right? So I will give, say, 2 GB here for my home. It comes out to be SDA3. See here, home automatically comes under the main heading of data, whereas boot and slash is coming under the main heading of system. So the user data is separated from the system data. One thing that is very interesting here, the way the RHEL behaves, is in case your storage, your hard disk is more than above 50 GB. In my case, it is 30 GB. In case it is more than 50 GB and you have chosen automatic partition, in that case also, the automatic partition will by default put home at a separate partition. So home will be created on a separate partition in case the total storage is more than 50 GB and you have selected automatic partition. So remember that very interesting point. Okay, what next? I can put swap. These I am just creating those partitions which are recommended by Red Hat that you should be creating at least these mount points: boot, slash, home, and swap. What is swap? Swap, I hope you might be knowing about swap, that swap is a virtual memory which is used when your physical memory or the RAM is not enough to store your data. There are certain points which you need to remember while creating the swap. That there are no guidelines. How the point here is that how much swap I should have. So my RAM is 8 GB. At any point of time, if you have forgotten how much RAM you have got, if you remember, I have told you about the virtual terminals which are available to you. So I press Alt Control F2 here. It will give me a virtual terminal. I will give the free command to get how much physical memory I have got, approximately 8 GB. I'll go back using Alt Control F6 and then I can choose my swap accordingly. So how much swap? So there are no guidelines. Some people say swap should always be double the size of RAM. No, it's not like that. If I have got 32 GB RAM, am I supposed to create 64 GB of swap? No. One catch here is that too much swap can also hide your memory leaks, because ultimately swap is on your hard disk and it's slower than your physical RAM, right? So the recommended guidelines are that if you have got less than 2 GB RAM, then you can have swap of double the size of RAM. If you have got RAM between 2 to 8 GB, then swap can be equal the size of RAM. If your RAM is in between 8 to 64 GB, then you can put simple 4 GB swap or half the size of RAM. And if you have got more than 64 GB of RAM, then it depends. You need to see the load, you need to see how many users will be connecting, what kind of applications I will be using. So a lot of things goes into it. So you need to continually monitor the usage of your swap. So currently I'm just giving here say 4 GB of swap or say 2 GB of swap. That's it. That's all. Add mount point. So it's swap approximately 2 GB. One very interesting thing that you should keep in mind is that a very important point here to note is that you can put var on a separate partition. Var is again a by default option which is given to you by the Anaconda or the RHEL installer, that you have the option of putting var at a separate mount point or a separate partition. But if you put straight away var, and one more example is USR /USR. If you put /USR or /var, if they are partitioned separately from the rest of the root, that means from rest of the slash, then the boot process will be, if I do it like this, forget the size, if I do it like this, that I'm putting the complete /var on a separate mount point, it is separate from root. Now it is isolated, not isolated, like it's now separated from root or your rest of the root. So the boot process will be more complex, as the var and the /USR, /var and /USR, these directories contain components critical to /root. So it might happen, I'm not saying it will happen, it might happen that the system may not be able to boot or hang with a specific error device busy while you are trying to do a reboot or you are trying to power up the machine. It can happen. But if I am running a FTP, so where FTP can be put separately, now the subdirectories can be put separately, can be mounted separately. So I will be putting var FTP separately if I intend to run this machine as a FTP server. As you know, or you might know, that by default location of the FTP is var FTP pub. So var FTP can be put separately, which will do no harm. Or if you are planning to run a web server, so var www can be put separately. So subdirectories, by putting var www or var FTP, it will work without issues. But if you put the whole var, then it can create issues. So that's a very interesting thing, that so if you are running a web server, so put var www separate, that makes sense. If you are running if you intend to run an FTP server, put where FTP separate. That makes sense, but please don't put /var directly, the complete /var separate. Don't do this. It's not at all recommended by Red Hat. Okay, so these are the partitions that you should be creating here. So I'm not putting it separate, so I'm just removing it. Don't worry, I cancel this. So I've used this much of space, so approximately 7.5 GB is still available to me. Let it be like this. So at least you should be creating these partitions. Even I'll repeat again, by default Red Hat requires only slash and swap, that's all. But it's highly recommended by Red Hat that you should be creating these partitions separately. So once you are done, you are happy, you click on the done here. Obviously it will ask you for the confirmation that I'm going to remove everything and will be creating these partition. Accept changes, custom partition selected. Wow, that's great. Now let's move on to the network and the host name. If this is a server, so it has to be some IP address, and I have to assign him a name. So click here, assign it a name. So I give anything, say server1.example.com or anything, say server1.networknuts.net, and IP address. This is your first LAN card. So you configure here, click on the configure, use IPv4 setting and choose manual, because we don't have a DSCP. You will not have a DSCP running. So you are creating your own lab, and the first step is create one machine at least. Manual, give it IP address. So I will use a private IP range 192.168.0.100. You can ignore the gateway, ignore the DNS, don't worry about it. Just click on save here and activate it. So your IP should be appearing here. You have assigned a static IP, manual IP to it. Click on done. The next step which is missing or you need to learn is kdump. What is kdump? If I click here, so kdump is actually a kernel crash dumping method which captures important event in case your kernel crash, but it takes certain amount of memory. So in case, in the scenario, if you have got less memory available to your machine, so you should avoid using it. But as I have got 8 GB of RAM, so I can give, say 128 MB will by default be taken by the kdump for the crash. I can change it, I'll not use it. Or I'll repeat again, if you have got less physical memory, uncheck it. So don't use it if you have got less physical memory. Click on done here, and now I have to click begin installation. So I click on the begin installation, and I need to assign a root password. Wow, this is good. Root is the boss here. Root is the boss here, which has got full rights on the machine. You cannot stop root. So good password policies are that you should have bigger password, should have multiple, a mix of numbers, uppercase, lowercase. So I give a simple password here, Red Hat, ignoring all the warnings. So you will be getting a message here, the password you provided is weak. The password will contain the username in some format. Okay, so I need to press done twice. 1, 2. Then I'm prompted to create a non-privileged user, a normal user. Why I should be using a non-privileged user when I have the root access? Red Hat recommends that, or it's a good security policy also, that you should be going or using the root privileges only when you require it. If you are doing a normal job like browsing something or creating some certain files, working on some non-dangerous issues or non-technical issues, you should be using with a normal user, non-privileged. user. So I create a user here with the name of Alok Srivastava. You feel free to use your own name. I can make him an admin. So it's a backdoor. In case I forgot the root password, I can use this root, as this root has got the full rights. I'm not making it. So, and I give the same password here, Red Hat. The password doesn't match. Okay, let me give it again. Red Hat, right? So you have got the rights to make it an admin, but I'm not doing it. Click on done twice again. And based on the packages that you have selected, based on the compute power of your machine, based on the physical memory you have, that the installer Anaconda will take its time to do the installation. So in the meanwhile, I'll give you certain tips for the partitioning. Number one, anything which you think is important for you, keep it on a separate partition. I have explained it with a simple example also. In case I intend to run this FTP server on this machine, so at the time of installation, I will be putting /var/ftp separate on a separate partition, separate mount. In case I intend to run a web server, so I will be placing /var/dub on a separate partition, and encrypt the partitions which you think contains your sensitive data, like home. So home is a good choice, though I hadn't done this, but home is a good choice, that you should be encrypting home so that it should not be getting some unauthorized access. So, and as I have already told you that kernel by default, a new kernel will take approximately 20 MB of space. So in case you're planning to have more kernels, please make boot size more than 500 MB, say 700, 800. You need to decide. There cannot be any benchmarks, but minimum 500 MB is there. Okay. And I'll repeat again, /var and /usr should not be directly mounted separately. Yes, subdirectories like var ftp and var www can be mounted separately if you are using ftp and httpd respectively. And var should be given if it is separate, though it's not recommended. So var should be given a good size, say more than 5 GB, because it will be containing logs and certain packages that you download. A lot of things goes inside the var. So keep the var with a good size. So these things you need to remember while doing the installation. It will take its time. In the meanwhile, we just have to wait, and the installation will be finished, and it will be our first day. The task for the day is you should understand the installation nitty-gritties, the word of caution that I had explained you, the partition size I had explained you. So once the installation is done, so now your first day of this virtual RHCE training is over. In the next day, in the next session, we will be learning about how to use the terminal. Let's be more comfortable with a graphical console, how to use it, how to take help. These are the small things. But first we need to wait and let it finish. So the idea of like in the meanwhile, I'm done with this, the technical stuff which is related to the installation part. There are multiple methods of installation. You can do a kickstart installation using say FTP, HTTP, but we will not be doing the kickstart installation now. Installing using the DVD or the ISO is the easiest method which we have done. But yes, RHEL can be installed from ISO, from network, using NFS, your FTP, HTTP, even HTTPS. So you can choose any of this, but currently we will be sticking ourselves to the installation using the DVD or the ISO. So you can see the number of packages are going up here. Will take a couple of minutes. So what I feel that this virtual trainings is that you will not be dumped with all the videos. We will be sending you one video in a day, depending upon when you have started it. Currently, might be, say, after a couple of months, we might have an option that you can call or say ask for all the videos. But my idea is to take simple steps, small steps at a time. So these virtual trainings are very important, and I think that is the only option to you if you are unable to come to us for the classroom sessions, or your job schedule or your roster is something that you cannot have a fixed time in a day when you can come for the class or for the online sessions. So this virtual training is the only way out. You can see this video the time when you are free, no problem. You can view this video one time, two time, multiple times, which flexibility or this benefit is not available to you in the classroom based sessions. And moreover, you know it, though I'll just say it to you, that after every module you will be receiving a doubt clearing session. So we will welcome you if you can come down to our training facility and have the doubt clearing session with the trainer. And in case you are not able to come, then you can have the online session for the doubt clearing. So even I will try my best that you should not have any doubts. So I'll try to make these videos as illustrative and as like in detail I can, but still you might have doubts. So for those, we have got these doubt clearing sessions that you can join either by classroom sessions or by online. It's solely up to you. You need to decide. It's just going to finish. That's all. Perfect. So it's finished. I'll just click on the reboot here and let it come. Wow. So first day is clear. Here it is. So I press enter here. Let's see the initial screen for the day, and then next thing we will learn tomorrow in the next session. So it's coming up, analyzing all the hardware. Here it is. Welcome RHEL7. And here you are. Be patient. Just a moment. Yeah. So obviously I need to accept the license. Just accept it. Need not to read it. Okay. I don't have a subscription because I'm using it just for the training purpose. So I'll say no. I will configure later on. Right. Don't use a key here. Just click on the finish configuration. You'll find a button there. Finish configuration. And here it is. It's my name here. I click here, give my password as Red Hat. So you have a fresh RHEL7 installation done. Welcome. So we will be spending our rest of time here. Just use the English as the language. Just a moment. Next. Just wait. I'll just finish it. Next. Start using RHEL Enterprise. That's it. This is by default, it will show you the help, how to take help, change date and time, certain things. Fair enough. This is my machine. So you have the complete GUI available, documents, everything, but we will be spending our time here on the terminal. That we'll be doing in the next session. Once the installation is done, let's move on to and explore RHEL 7 and learn about the command. So thank you very much. This is Alok Srivastava signing off for the day, and see you again in next session for our in this Odoo one day one video virtual trainings from network maps. Bye bye, take care.